Now, of course, this is ugly as mentioned, so how could we make it more beautiful? Well, to make it more beautiful, we have to add more widgets. At the moment, we only have a very basic combination of widgets. One widget that will help us a lot with making this look better is another built-in widget, the scaffold widget. Now, you can always, of course, read about widgets in the official documentation, and there you also learn how to use a widget, but you're watching this course so that you don't have to do that, though that, of course, is always a great backup resource. But the scaffold widget is a widget that in the end helps us with setting up a good-looking screen in our app. The Material App widget is the root widget, which is important for setting up the overall app. But many apps, of course, consist of multiple screens, and those screens also must be set up. And even if you have just one screen in the app, as we have it here, this screen must be set up to have, for example, a nice background color, to enforce some basic styling onto its child widgets, and so on. So therefore here we want to wrap text with the scaffold widget, because scaffold must be inside of Material App, but should be wrapped around the widgets that belong to a screen. Now, to wrap text with scaffold, we can of course type scaffold here and execute this. And then grab text here, this text widget, with its text content, and then pass it to scaffold, though scaffold now again wants a named argument. And in case you're wondering how I know which widget wants which kind of arguments, you can hover over a widget to learn about the accepted arguments here in this info window that opens up. You can also learn about supported arguments here in the official documentation, but of course for the moment I will simply tell you which arguments can be passed where, and you will then automatically memorize these things as you gain more experience with Flutter. So for scaffold, it's actually a body argument which we should set here, and I'm also getting some autocompletion here whilst typing this, which of course helps a lot. And the value for body then is the widget that should be shown inside of this scaffold widget. So with that, if I save this should reload automatically. If it doesn't, you can press this refresh button here in this panel, which opened up when you started the app, and now it should update. And you see it looks much better. We got the white background, the hello world text looks nicer, even though it's still, of course, hidden in the top left corner, but we already gained a lot by adding this widget. It's of course not enough though. Instead, it would be nice if Hello World would be kind of in the middle here, if it would be centered on the screen. And that can be achieved with help of another widget, which of course also can be found in the widget catalog in the layout category, since I want to center my text here, so it's a layouting action I want to perform. And there it's the center widget that can help us with, well, centering widgets. For that, we need to wrap text with yet another widget. And that is something you'll do a lot when writing Flutter code. You'll build these complex widget trees, as I called them before, where you have widgets inside of widgets inside of widgets. So here we want to wrap text with yet another widget. And for that, we could manually add it as before. But you can also right-click on code here on this text widget, and then choose this refactor action that's suggested by Visual Studio Code. You can of course also use the shortcut that's suggested for that. And if you click that, you get some refactoring suggestions. And refactoring in programming simply is the process of changing your existing code. And here you get some smart actions suggested. For example, you can choose wrap with widget to get some help with wrapping this with a widget. But you even get a wrap with center suggestion here, which you can pick by clicking on it or by selecting it and hitting enter. And this will automatically create the center widget and pass the text widget to center, to be precise, to the named child argument of the center widget. Now, of course, things are getting quite unreadable here. This is becoming a super long line here, and this is still a simple widget tree. And therefore, of course, you typically want to structure this code a bit differently to make it easier to read and to maintain. Because even this basic widget combination is already getting too long here. Now, to make this easier to read and more structured, Dart offers a nice trick, or actually recommended pattern or approach to help with formatting widget trees. For that, you should add a comma after every closing parentheses here, except for the last one, where you need a semicolon. And if you do that, You can run the format document command in Visual Studio Code or use the shortcut for that to auto-format your code, which is something I do a lot when writing code in general. And if you hit this shortcut, you see the code changes, it's formatted differently, and now it's way easier to understand this widget tree. Because now you have some nice indentation that shows you which widget is inside of which other widget. And this widget tree, this code, is now way easier to read and understand. And this is something you can do in many programming languages, definitely in Dart. As you can see, you can split code across multiple lines. And you then don't have semicolons at the end of those lines, because this in the end here is still one single instruction, just split across multiple lines. Now you can't split it at arbitrary points, for example, not in the middle of a word, in the middle of material app, that would fail, but you can split it here after these opening parentheses, for example, and also after such a closing parenthesis and such a comma here, or even in front of the comma if you wanted to, but this auto-formatting shortcut will basically do that for you. And by simply adding these commas after all these closing parentheses, you're giving the code editor in the end a signal where to best split this code when using this auto-formatting shortcut, because it will then simply do this after every comma here. And since you will build a lot of widget trees when building Flutter apps, and of course also way more complex widget trees with way more widgets than we have it here, it is absolutely a recommended pattern to always add these commas after your closing parentheses and then use this auto-formatting shortcut to make sure your code is structured and easy to read and understand. And if you save this now, it again should update automatically, or if it doesn't, as it's the case for me, update it manually. And now you see that Hello World is centered in the middle of this screen. So by adding these two built-in widgets, Scaffold and Center, we again improved the app and we're making good progress towards our goal of building our first custom Flutter app.